They say money can't buy happiness, but it can buy power. I had both. My name is Julian, and I used to rule this city from a penthouse of glass. How did a man with 50 luxury cars end up walking barefoot in the dark? It all started with a father who worked too hard, and a son who didn't work at all. I remember the smell of my father's expensive cigars and the sound of his disappointment. Julian, he would say, money is a tool, not a toy. I never listened. I treated people like chess pieces. If they weren't useful, I threw them away. My friends were as fake as the diamonds on my watch. We spent nights drinking $1,000 bottles and laughing at the world below. I thought the party would never end. I thought I was invincible. But karma has a way of catching up when you're driving too fast. One phone call changed my life forever. My father was gone. I didn't cry for him. I cried for the inheritance I thought was mine. I walked into the lawyer's office expecting a kingdom. I walked out with a lesson. The lawyer looked at me with pity. That was the first time I felt small. Every asset, every house, every cent, it was all tied to a single condition. A condition I thought was a joke that ruined me. Within 24 hours, the locks were changed, the guards were gone. And Julian, the Prince of New York, became Julian, the ghost of the streets. I remember my mother's 50th birthday. The house was filled with the scent of lilies. She had prepared my favorite meal, waiting for me to sit beside her. But I didn't show up. I was busy buying a yacht I didn't even need. When she called me, crying, I told her she was ruining my mood. I told her to buy herself a diamond and leave me alone. I thought money could replace presents. My father tried to intervene. He came to my penthouse that evening. He looked at the mess of empty bottles and the strangers sleeping on my sofas. He said, Julian, your mother's heart is more valuable than your entire bank account. I just laughed. I told him his heart was just a muscle that would eventually stop beating. I was so blinded by the gold that I couldn't see the gray in his hair or the fatigue in his eyes. I demanded more money for a trip to Ibiza. I didn't ask how his business was doing. He handed me his credit card like a man handing a weapon to a young assassin. I didn't know that was the last time he would ever give me anything. I spent that night throwing cash at people who didn't even know my last name. I felt like a king, but I was just a fool in a silk cape. Every time my parents reached out, I pushed them further away. I thought they were trying to control me. I didn't realize they were trying to save me. I was building a wall of money between us, stone by stone. And then, the wall came crashing down. The phone call I mentioned earlier, it was my mother. She wasn't crying for money this time. She was whispering that Dad was gone. I arrived at the hospital in my fastest car, tires screeching against the pavement. I didn't run to the ICU because I loved him. I ran because I was afraid of the bank accounts being frozen. The air in the hallway smelled like bleach and death. It made me sick. I found my mother sitting outside his room. She looked 20 years older than yesterday. She tried to hug me, but I stepped back. I didn't want her tears on my designer jacket. Is he awake? I asked. Does he have the signatures for the estate transfer? She looked at me like I was a stranger. Julian, your father is dying, she whispered. I pushed past her and entered the room. The machines were beeping, a steady, lonely rhythm. My father lay there, pale and small. The man who built empires looked like a shadow. Dad, I said, leaning over him, don't leave me without finishing the paperwork. He opened his eyes for a second, There was no anger in them, only a deep, crushing pity. He pointed a trembling finger at a small briefcase in the corner of the room. I grabbed it, my heart pounding. I thought I had won. I thought the kingdom was mine. I didn't even say goodbye. I walked out as the monitors turned into a flat, haunting tone. Doctors rushed in, but I was already at the elevator, clutching my treasure. I went straight to my favorite bar. I wanted to celebrate my new independence. I snapped the locks open, expecting to see gold, deeds, or stacks of cash. But inside, there was only a pair of old, worn-out leather-work boots. And a single photograph of my father when he was 20, covered in grease and sweat. I threw the briefcase across the room. I thought it was his final joke. I didn't know it was my final warning. Next morning, the sun didn't feel warm. It felt like a spotlight on my failure. 2 men in dark suits were waiting at my door. They weren't friends. They were bailiffs. They handed me a notice. Vacate the premises immediately, it said in cold block ink. I screamed at them. I told the Nino wall they didn't care. I rushed to my father's lawyer, Mr. Henderson. He had been our family's shadow for years. He sat behind his heavy oak desk, looking at me with a mixture of pity and disgust. I told Mr. Henderson to fix it. This eviction had to be a mistake. My money didn't just disappear. He slowly opened a thick file. The sound of the paper felt like a knife cutting through the air. Julian, your father left a very specific will. Every asset is now under the control of a trust. The trust is for the Sterling Foundation for Orphans, not for you.
But I'm his son,
I shouted. He can't leave me with nothing. He didn't leave you with nothing, Julian. He left you the briefcase. The boots, I laughed bitterly. You expect me to live in a pair of old boots?
Mr. Henderson stood up. Those boots built this empire, Julian. You just spent it.
He told me my bank accounts were already closed. My credit cards were now just pieces of plastic. I walked out of that office into a world that suddenly felt very big and very expensive. I went to my garage to take my Ferrari. It was already being towed away. Keys to my home didn't work. The locks had been changed by people I used to pay. I had $10 in my pocket and a suit that cost $5,000. I was a walking irony. I thought I had a brotherhood. I thought my friends would never let me fall. I went to Marcus, the man I had gifted a diamond watch just last month. He looked at my wrinkled suit and my messy hair like I was a beggar he didn't recognize. Julian, he said. Sorry man, I don't hang out with losers. It's bad for my brand. The doors of the VIP club slammed shut in my face. The same doors I used to own. I spent my first night in a 24-hour diner, ordering a coffee I couldn't afford. The waitress looked at my expensive watch and then at my shaking hands. She knew. I walked until my designer shoes gave me blisters. I had never walked this much in my life. By the third day, hunger wasn't just a feeling. It was a sharp pain in my stomach. I saw a half-eaten sandwich in a trash can. For 10 minutes, I just stared at it. Julian of last week would have laughed at this. The Julian of today, he ate it.
Rain started to pour, soaking my silk shirt until it felt like a second skin of ice.
I found myself back in my father's old warehouse, the place where he started it all. It was empty and cold. I crawled into a corner, clutching the briefcase with the boots. I opened it again. This time, I didn't see junk. I saw a man's life. I touched the worn-out leather. These boots had walked through fire so I could walk on gold. And I had wasted it all on people who didn't even remember my name when the music stopped. I realized that the royalty I lived in was just a cage I built for myself. My father wasn't punishing me. He was waiting for me to hit the bottom so I could finally look up. I put the boots on. They were heavy, they were hard, and they were exactly what I needed. I woke up at 5 a.m. The world was quiet, but for the first time, my mind was loud with purpose. I walked to a construction site nearby. The foreman looked at my expensive torn suit and laughed. Ha ha ha. Do you want a job? He asked. Can those soft hands of yours even lift a brick? I didn't say a word. I just pointed at my feet. I was wearing my father's boots. He gave me a shovel. For 12 hours, I moved dirt until my body felt like it was breaking. The blisters on my hands bled, but every drop felt like I was washing away a sin. At the end of the day, he handed me $50, my first honest pay in 30 years. I didn't buy champagne. I bought a simple loaf of bread and a bottle of water. I realized that the bread I earned tasted better than any steak I had ever stolen from my father's wealth.
Month passed. I moved into a small, one-room apartment.
It was tiny, but it was mine. I finally gathered the courage to visit my mother. I had been too ashamed to face her. She opened the door. When she saw me, she didn't see the rich brat. She saw her son. I fell to my knees and asked for her forgiveness. She just held my head and cried.
She told me, Julian, your father knew you weren't evil. You were just lost in the gold.
She took me to his grave. It was a simple stone, just like the man he was. I took off the boots and placed them on the grass. I understand now, Dad, I whispered. I learned that a man is not measured by the height of his skyscraper, but by the depth of his character. The money is gone, and the friends are gone. But for the first time in my life, I am not alone. Because I finally found the man my father always wanted me to be. True wealth isn't what you have in your bank. It's what you have in your heart when you have nothing else.